3-4. Our objective today is to understand and be able to work with compound inequalities. And just like a compound sentence, you put two sentences together. A compound inequality is when you put two inequalities together. So when you put two inequalities together, and we have 4 examples of how we can put these things together. The first one in words says r is greater than 2 and less than 6. So we're looking for the numbers bigger than 2 and less than 6, and we're trying to put or graph only those we're going to put those on a graph. To write this, you would have 2 is smaller than x. X is the number we're talking about, and x is smaller than 6. And this basically says all the numbers between 2 and 6. So 2 is smaller than that number, and that number is smaller than 6. On a graph, you would have an open circle on a 2, an open circle on a 6, and everything in between those two colored in. And if you read over that second one, r is greater than or equal to 2 and less than or equal to 6, the only thing that's different here is now you have the equal to's in there. So we're looking at the numbers between 2 and 6. 2 is less than or equal to x, less than or equal to 6. And on our graph, we will now have colored in circles and everything between the 2 and the 6 colored in. These first two are called an intersection. So right over here, write intersection. And the symbol for intersection is kind of like that, kind of like an N. And what that means is, right here we have 2 separate inequalities. The first one says the numbers that are bigger than 2, and I guess that should be an open circle, well, let's call it a closed circle. The second one says the numbers that are smaller than 6. And so for intersection, we only want the parts that are on both of those graphs. The numbers that are smaller than 2 and, the numbers that are bigger than 2 and the numbers that are smaller than 6. Intersection is the numbers that are in both of those graphs, and that kind of cuts off right here and right here. Those are the numbers that are in both of the graphs, and that's what we have graphed there. So that's called an intersection. The next example says r is less than 2 or r is greater than 6. And if you think about this, r is less than 2, so the numbers that are smaller than 2, and the numbers that are greater than 6, there is no number that's smaller than 2 or bigger and bigger than 6. So we have to write 2 different equations here. First of all, our number is smaller than 2, or our second option is that that number is bigger than 6. And this one, we are actually going to have 2 graphs. First one's going to go to the left, the numbers that are smaller than 2, and the second one's going to go to the right, the numbers that are bigger than 6. So this is an OR. You can pick from the ones on the left-hand graph or the ones on the right-hand graph. So there's 2 possible graphs there. And the last one is exactly the same, only now we have the equal to. So to write this as an inequality, you would have x is less than or equal to 2, or I guess I should call this x is greater than or equal to 6. Sorry, I messed up my variable on that one. All I did was add the equal to. On my graph, I'm going to add the closed circle, I'm going to add the closed circle. And that's what the graph will look like. These two, you need to take all of this part of the graph and this part of the graph and put them together. And that is called the union when you join these two parts of the graph. Everything in the first part, everything in the second part, put them all together. And we're going to use the letter U for that one. So intersection is the overlapping part, and union is when you just take them and put them all together. The first thing they're going to ask us to do is graph these inequalities. So -3 is less than x is less than or equal to 10. We are going to have an open circle on a -3. We are going to have a closed circle on the 10. And then everything between those two colored in. Number 2 is the opposite. This is the OR one. So we're going to have one thing go to the right, one thing go to the left. X is less than or equal to -1. So we've got a closed circle here on the -1 and everything to the left. X is greater than 2. You have an open circle on the 2 and everything to the right. And that's what your graph is going to look like. And let's write down this first one. This is what we call an intersection. There are actually two different graphs there. And this is the only part that's on both of those graphs. And this one, we had one graph here, one graph there. We have to put them together. That's called the union. Number 3, -6 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 1. We're going to have a closed circle on a -6. We're going to have a closed circle on a 1. And everything in between those two colored in. There's actually two graphs, and this is the overlap. So this is called the intersection. And the last one, number 4, x is less than or equal to -2. We're going to go to the left. X is greater than or equal to 4, and we're going to go to the right. And that one is going to be a union. We have to take this first graph, the second graph, and put it together.
What is the circle on number 4?
Oh, colored in?
Yeah.
Yep, it would be. Is that what you were going to say? All right. Number 5, 5 through 8. We are asked to write the compound inequalities for these two. When you have the two arrows going in opposite direction, that's an OR. So these numbers are smaller than or equal to -8. And these numbers are bigger than 0. So we have to write the OR, the equation on the left, or the equation on the right. This one is a union. Number 6, we basically have all the numbers between -2 and 5. So you have -2 is less than x is less than 5. Open circles, so we're just going to have a less than. What's that? Number 7, -9 is our smaller number. -2 is our higher number. We want everything in the middle, and those are going to be open circles. And just kind of a heads up, I think there's one on either your notes, I think it's on the back page of the notes, or your assignment. And this inequality is written the other way around. -2 is greater than x is greater than -9. And if you ever end up with one like that, just switch it around so your smallest number is at the beginning. This one right here is an intersection. And the last one here, number 8, these numbers are smaller than or equal to -3. Or you can pick from these numbers over here, which are bigger than or equal to 2. And that one is a union when you put everything together. The graph on the right, you put together with the graph on the left.